Good morning, Judge Chicchelly. How are you doing today?
I'm well. How are you, Justice Wiggins?
Okay, we appreciate your application and we're ready for your opening remarks.
All right, very well. First of all, I'd like to start by thanking you, Justice Wiggins, and all of you commissioners. I have met so many of you over the past several weeks during the course of this process, and really understand fully that you've spent a lot of time and a lot of thoughtful process with regard to this matter. I know that you've given it quite a bit of careful attention, as this is such an important position, and I do appreciate all of your hard work, and it has been my extreme privilege to meet each and every one of you. I'd also like to commend the other candidates that have applied. I was very delighted to see such a strong panel of candidates, and have engaged in this process and have made themselves available for consideration here. As I went throughout the state meeting with so many of you, the two questions that I was consistently asked were as follows. Why am I pursuing this position, number one, and number two, what can I bring to this position personally? And here's how I can answer those two questions. First of all, as I have discussed so frequently throughout these last several weeks, I've spent the majority of my entire adult life pursuing opportunities to serve the public. It is an extreme dedication to public service that I have. I think that might be most noted in certainly the work that I did with the United States Marine Corps for a short time. I did do a lot of court-appointed work and also a great deal of pro bono work throughout my 20 years of practice as a practicing lawyer. I've also spent a lot of time engaging in charitable opportunities, ringing the bell for Salvation Army, fundraising for our local Alzheimer's Association chapter, and consistently working with our local Marion Metro Kiwanis group in leadership positions and other manners. Also, it's been my honor in the past 5 years, a little more than 5 years, to serve as a district court judge for this wonderful state. And I feel that there is something of a natural progression toward offering myself for this position at this time to the highest court. I do believe that it would be the highest honor, really, truly, to serve the people of our state in this capacity. Next, what can I bring to this position? What differentiates me from the other candidates? And I haven't had a great deal of time to review the applications of the other candidates. To be quite frank, I've been out of town for an extended period of time. And so what I can do is I can tell you about me and leave the comparisons up to you folks. I've spent 5.5 years approximately on the district court bench, and this is a court obviously of general jurisdiction, making decisions such as those which are typically reviewed by the Iowa Supreme Court. A trial court judge has this unique perspective in terms of how decisions are made at the trial court level and how the work of a district court judge is actually done. It's life in the trenches, really. And I believe that I can bring that practical aspect to the review process to add that perspective to the Supreme Court. In addition, I believe that the only justice on the current Supreme Court who went directly from the district court bench to the Supreme Court is the justice that is leaving the Supreme Court at this time. I also do believe that my service in leadership roles as a judge, as the Judges Association, the Iowa Judges Association president and legislative liaison, support my candidacy here. I've supported in those roles access to justice and budgetary issues that affect the entire judicial branch. I also have done work in mentoring minority legal clerks in the National College of State Trial Court Judges. Also supporting my candidacy is my progression of my law practice. As a young adult, I grew up in a large family with many lawyers, and I have always been drawn to the law. As a judicial clerk right out of law school, that's where I can honestly say that I fell in love with the law. Legal writing, research, problem solving how to figure out what the problem is, how to solve it, and how to write that opinion with the judges that I was serving. I also had 20 years of trial practice with wide exposure to many practice areas over the years, including trial practice in both civil and criminal matters, including a murder case, felonies, misdemeanors, insurance defense, medical malpractice defense, plaintiff's work, juvenile law, probate, family law, just to name a few. I had great many mentors. Wonderful judge that mentored me, Judge Steve Carroll, who I served as a law clerk for, who administered my oath to the bench. Tom Riley and Ed Gallagher, wonderful teachers. I practiced law in many courtrooms throughout our state, from Lamar's to Macokota, and had varied exposure to many kinds of cases, also exposed to many nuances and local practices, and innuendos as to how cases progressed in many counties throughout our state. And I also wanted to do one thing with regard to clarification of my application. I note that in reviewing my application, the number of trials that are listed were only the number of trials that I had in the 5 years just prior to my coming on the bench. That did not include, as I believe some of the other candidates may have included, that did not include the well into the 100s of cases that I have been a trial court presiding judge for. Also, geographic diversity supports my candidacy. Our Supreme Court has 3 justices from the Des Moines area, none from Cedar Rapids, our second most populated metropolitan area in this state. Only 1 justice remaining on the court after the departure of Justice Zager will be from east of I-35. And also, as I mentioned, I've had experience practicing law in numerous counties throughout the state, both large and small. With regard to the issue of diversity, and certainly not least in terms of where I come from, gender diversity supports my candidacy. Granted, you have many candidates who are women, and I am very heartened to see that. But it cannot be emphasized enough. A woman's voice would bring tremendous dimension and perspective to this court. More than half of all Iowans are women. Diversity, as you all know, has the ability to enrich the jurisprudence of the commission, to support the public confidence of the court. I also believe that my record of having timely decisions in over 5,500 dispositions, less than 26 have been appealed and only 1 reversed, and most of those decisions were made within about 21 days' time. And last but not least, temperament. I have demonstrated over the past several years on the bench adherence to the rule of law, dedication to access to justice, and judicial independence. I work well with others. I know that many of you have received letters of support. I have not solicited those letters of support. Those letters of support have come to you and speak, I think, probably fairly clearly as to how I treat lawyers and litigants within our courtroom. And I believe they also speak to my decisiveness, my integrity, my thoughtfulness, and my competence. So these are qualities that I do bring to bear at this time in support of my candidacy. And I am happy at this point to entertain any questions you may have, Justice Wiggins.
Thank you very much, Judge Chicchelly. We're going to start with questioning, and we're going to start with Ms. Pearson.
No questions at this time.
Ms. Bowden?
Thank you. Thank you for your application.
Thank you.
You did serve in the Marines for a period of time. Could you please tell me what you learned from the Marines, and has that shaped you as a person you are today?
Absolutely. So I went into the Marine Corps. I was about 20 years old. It was 1988, and I went into officer candidate school. I spent about 7 weeks in training, and during the course of that time, I injured my legs, and I needed to come out of the Marine Corps. Spent a great deal of time healing my legs, and once I was able to go to be considered to go back to the Marine Corps, my life had kind of moved on, and I ended up working in Washington, D.C. for a period of time. The time frame that I spent in the Marine Corps was really, truly shaping. the esprit de corps, the ability to work with others, the notion of having something so much greater than myself to fight for and to use my qualities and my gifts for, were really, those were things that I really took to heart after that experience. I don't know how I would have shaped otherwise, because I don't have that alternative universe to look at, but I can tell you that it really fueled my fire and my passion to serve. And I've never really looked back from that. It was a wonderful opportunity, and I was glad and very honored to have had the opportunity to do that.
Thank you.
Mr. Berger? Mr. Diaz?
Good afternoon, Judge. You brought up the subject of diversity, and as you were talking, it was made obvious to me that you're in front of a commission made up of 8 women, 8 men, and then we add the Justice Wiggins to that mix. So it's kind of interesting to me that we find ourselves with 7 men on the Iowa Supreme Court. We've got a number of female candidates, and we have across the board what look to be, very qualified individuals. How do we factor in gender into this discussion that we're going to have this afternoon? How is this going to, in your mind, how does this work? And why is gender at the top of our list? Is it somewhere in the mix? I'm just wanting to get your sort of impression on it, since you've raised that issue.
I want to submit to you that it should be at the top of your list. The notion of gender equality and gender parity in the practice of law, it's not a terribly new notion. We've had female lawyers in this state for quite a long time. But when you look at the progression of women once when they attend law school and once they graduate from law school, here's kind of what happens. So you have about 50-50 in terms of numbers, and I've actually contacted most recently the University of Iowa College of Law. About 50-50 in terms of women coming into the classes at Iowa. By the time that they're graduating, roughly 45% are going into associate positions at law firms. By the time that they get to the opportunity to reach partnership levels in law firms, those numbers tank way down into the 20 percentile. And then in terms of leadership positions and in judicial positions, the numbers are roughly that, if not even worse. Why does that happen? Well, we have a society where I think a lot of times women are made to feel that they really need to, if they've decided to have a family, be that person who can stay home and raise that family. Very, very important. Certainly one of the most important jobs that I've had in my life is raising my children. But the challenge is that on a larger level, in terms of corporations and law firms and people who employ those women, there aren't a lot of times the necessary mechanisms to allow a woman to have that balance, so much as a male has had that opportunity to have that balance. And so what you end up with, I think, in terms of progression there is women who have had fewer opportunities, who've had fewer abilities to advance, fewer speaking engagements, fewer opportunities even to write sometimes, versus the male counterparts who have felt a lot less societal pressure to be taking those roles and to be able to do a lot of additional enrichment professionally that the female counterparts have not had the ability to do. And so it's not that women aren't as smart, certainly not that women aren't as capable. It's just a difference in how the progression of a woman and a man are often different in this world. And so we get to this point here where I sit before you today, and the Supreme Court has been made up of all men for quite a span of time here. And if you're looking only at academics and, you know, who's had the biggest, most prestigious, most powerful jobs, and those kinds of things, you are going to absolutely find that that is going to, in most instances, be a man. But if you want to bring perspective, if you want to bring voice, if you want to bring a rich jurisprudence to this court, then you need to look at a different kind of voice, a different perspective, and a person who has reached this position in a different way.
Dr. Taylor? Mr. Bowen? Ms. Sinclair? Ms. Deacon?
Yes. Judge, I'd like you to address the issue. We've had a chance to review some of your decisions, you know, writing style. As a Supreme Court Justice, do you believe your writing style would have to change, and if so, in what way?
Well, I think that part of my writing style has always been to address more the loser of the case than the winner. The winner often will skip to the end and say, hey, I won. They don't really care what's in the middle. The loser of the case needs to understand that they had that process, needs to understand why it is that I am deciding the case that I'm deciding. But there's also another aspect of my writing that has been, over the years, toward the appellate level. The appellate courts are going to look at my work. They need to understand my thought process. They need to understand my thinking and how I'm addressing these issues. And if there's some gap there that they think I'm not getting, then I need to show my work. I think once at that level of the Supreme Court, that notion is a much more muted notion. I need to show my work, but I more so need to show my work so that not the courts necessarily above me, but the people who are reviewing my decision understand where I got it. Where did I come to that answer? Thank you.
Mr. Sukup?
Thank you, Your Honor. Judge, I believe there's a recent case that came down from the Supreme Court that Justice Wiggins and Judge Drew would appreciate your voice and deliberations there. I know the Justice gave a vigorous dissent on it. Secondly, you mentioned Judge Carroll. I know you've done some presentations with Judge Carroll. What areas were of those?
So Judge Carroll has been my mentor since just out of law school, and he's been someone that I could call and contact, and professionally, if I had questions, would provide me wonderful wisdom and leadership and guidance. As a judge, I have worked with Judge Carroll on some aspects of judicial education of other judges, in terms of new judges school. In addition, he's provided good mentoring for me when I've done other presentations for the Judges Association on helping other judges understand how to best address self-represented litigants within our courtrooms, and also in the judicial determination at the district court level of sentencing of juveniles.
Thank you.
Mr. Goodman?
My question has been answered, Mr. Chairman. Thank you.
Mr. Bloom?
No questions, thank you.
Ms. Conover?
Judge Chicchelly, you and I function in the 6th Judicial District, and probably happens in other judicial districts around the state as well, but certainly my clients have had the experience of cases being bumped due to lack of judicial resources, and maybe even more importantly, I know my family law colleagues talk about some of their cases getting bumped, which is very troubling to me, that families who are in crisis over custody decisions, divorce decisions, those kinds of things, can't get quick, decisive answers from the court to their issues. In your role as a district court judge, have you given any thought to how the judicial system can improve serving the public with fewer and fewer resources? And I realize that's a topic we could probably talk about all day long, but
I was going to say, do you have a couple hours? Because, yeah, this is something that we really do talk about quite a bit on the bench. We work very closely with our court administrator and try to figure out ways that we can get cases in more quickly. How can we handle the workload with a shrinking judicial budget? Those are topics of concern that we deal with really on a daily basis in the branch. I've spent a lot of time talking about this with legislators on behalf of the Iowa Judges Association. One of the things that we need to do is make sure that legislators and people throughout the state of Iowa really understand what the judicial branch is here for. We're not a branch of the government that only you use if you decide that you need to get a divorce or if you have a car accident. We are, my viewpoint is that we are all court users every day, that we are we are in this state of Iowa, that we are Iowans. The fact of the matter is that if you need access to justice, the court system is here for you. And so to that extent, with regard to budget issues, it's very important that legislators understand that all of their constituents are court users, and that this is really a backbone, it's fundamental to the democratic process to have a strong judiciary. Beyond that, we've made some modifications as to how we approach things in the 6th Judicial District in terms of streamlining how we handle our civil cases. We individually assign those and hopefully keep those docketed more easily. I think with the continuity of one judge to a civil case, that allows the litigants the ability to kind of get an idea of what the judge's rulings are going to be in terms of evidentiary calls at the time of trial. It may inspire settlements, so we're trying to do some of those things. And definitely, we have a majorly wonderful esprit de corps amongst the judges of our district in terms of really just looking at the dockets and doing our best to get the job done.
Ms. Roberts?
Good morning.
Good morning.
You are one of several district court judges who have applied for this position, which gives you some broad experience. Can you identify a moment in time or an instance in your career thus far that you believe really positions you to serve well on the Supreme Court?
I don't know if there's a moment that I could really point to. I feel that every day when I walk into the courtroom and I can sort things out and do something meaningful in terms of clearing a path, leading a way, making a decision that makes lives of people easier, inspires me more to take that each day and add public service each day. And so I think it's just more of a process for me than it is any one particular moment. But I do appreciate the question.
Ms. O'Brien? Mr. Haba? Mr. Gray? I don't think I have any questions either, so we do appreciate you coming this morning in your application, and we wish you the best of luck.
All right, and again, I very much appreciate all of your time. Thank you so much for having me this morning, and I have every confidence that you will choose a wonderful justice for this esteemed court, and thank you very much.